Hey, welcome back to All Things Baseball Podcast. Back here with me, your host Johnny, and my dad John.
Hey,
We're here to talk about the big news that just came into the world of baseball. It's the lifting of the ban for Shoeless Joe Jackson, Pete Rose, and some other deceased players. And I just hit the news line recently.
yeah,
This is
I think before we get started, we want to make sure people like and subscribe. We want to give you the All Things Baseball podcast take on this big news. We think it's big news. It's obviously a major change. We're going to talk a little bit about it, but we want you to like and subscribe. And listen, if you don't like this episode, right afterwards, you can unlike it and unsubscribe it, but don't do that either. So do me a favor, like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm, and then wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us.
All right. Yeah. So lifting of the ban on these players. I mean, how do we feel about it right now?
I was telling you offline that my feelings about it have changed. They've kind of evolved. I was definitely in the camp of one of our guests, Matthew Carter. It was more like, hey, listen, Pete Rose in particular, he gambled on baseball. That was the cardinal sin. It
Yeah.
says in every clubhouse, ban. I don't know exactly what it says, but it says something about, you know, you cannot gamble on baseball. It doesn't say a lot of
Right.
things. Like it doesn't say, you can't gamble. Excuse me, you can't cheat on your wife, or you can't drink too much. You can't. It doesn't tell you those things. It's not making a lot of moral judgments in the locker rooms with their statements, but they do basically, since the Black Sox scandal, they do mention specifically not to gamble. So or not to bet on baseball and not to be involved in gambling. So
Yeah.
certainly in the old days for me, I thought, okay, well, listen, he knew the rules, he broke the rules, and now he's ineligible for the Hall of Fame. But then over time, what happens?
Well, they started to invite him to events. We just seen on ESPN First Take with Stephen A. and Mad Dog Russo. They were kind of breaking it down that they would invite Pete Rose out to these events, and they wouldn't invite him to other certain events. So it was kind of a pick and choose.
And why do you think that
Yeah.
was?
Well, as they had mentioned, it was definitely for profit. They wanted to make money off his name when they could, and when there were big opportunities for it. I definitely can see that. I mean, it makes the most sense. And now that he's not alive anymore, they may feel like the window of opportunity is gone to make money, which is kind of a schemy, kind of old fashioned, like, oh, it's more so, that he's passed and now that, we can finally let this lifetime ban go.
Right.
But then we offline, we talked about that Shoeless Joe never, his ban was lifetime. And I think it's just now they're also including him and the other players to be mentioned.
Yeah, and just to be
I,
specific, right? We want to be specific. Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe and anybody else that's from a different era, they're not going to be on the next ballot, right? It's not like they're opening
yeah,
up and they can be voted on. There's
there's
the
gonna be
voting rules require players to have played in the big leagues no more than 15 years prior to the election, and Rose last played in 1986. So Rose will be considered by what they call an era committee, right? So, and this comes from my friend Coop in my fantasy league, and he's basically saying here that his career falls under the classic baseball era, players whose greatest impact in the game was prior to 1980. And that committee is made up of 16 players and writers and Hall of Fame players and
Mhm.
veterans, excuse me, veteran writers. And so that doesn't meet again until 2026, or for the
Mhm.
class of 2027, excuse me. It meets will be December 2027 for the class of 2028. Pardon me. So I think that's interesting because all this fuss, and obviously that doesn't mean he's getting in. It just means that they're allowed to vote on him in the Eras Committee. Now, if he misses that particular one, or Shoeless Joe misses that one, it could be another couple of years, before the Eras Committee meets again. Now we know Dave Parker, and who was the other one that got in recently? Um, Dick Allen. They both got in from the Eras Committee.
Yeah. Um. So what would hold them back, Shoeless Joe and Pete, from being in the Hall of Fame? Like the era committee, like what would be their qualms to keep them out?
Depends on who's on the committee, and it's not the same every era. Like every time they meet, it's going to be different veteran writers and different players,
Yeah.
guys, different Hall of Famers. So I know Johnny Bench and some of the purists were dead set against Pete getting in, if I have it correct. And then guys like Joe Morgan is no longer alive. Like he was pushing for the Hall of Fame players to like kind of take a chill pill and let's consider it. So it really depends on who's on it. And I don't know about the veteran writers. Some of the older writers will maybe take a hardline stance. Some of the newer writers will be like, listen, you know, Pete's the hit king. He's got the most hits in the history of Major League Baseball. And,
Yeah.
Pete used to say it's not the Hall of Good, right? And we talked about, like I mentioned, Babe Ruth was a womanizer. He cheated on his wife. He drank too much. He went around with prostitutes. And I'm saying this, I read 3 of his books. So this is
Mantle wasn't a saint either.
Mantle wasn't a saint. Willie Mays, we talked about, he was banned from baseball for a year. This was after he was elected into the Hall of Fame, but he was banned for being an ambassador for Bally's, as was Mickey Mantle. But what was interesting was Willie Mays said, I represented a dog track and a horse racing track, but as soon as I represented a casino, Bowie Kuhn, the commissioner of baseball, banned him. So it speaks to what you were saying before about the unevenness of it. Baseball
Yeah.
kind of picks and chooses when they're going to take the moral higher ground. What do you think of that?
They do, and they always say like it's in our best interest. Usually, like that they are going to be withheld from baseball, and they do it for so long too. Like, there's never any like appeal. There's never any like. You ever notice like it's not? It's always just how the Major League Baseball feels. Like that's always their coin to toss. Like, all right, this is it, and this is how it's going to be.
Right.
Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's always a. Um, it's always their decision. Like to be made and had, and that's the final kind of say. I think. I mean, they most likely do have committees, and I'm sure people out there can do the research. But when they come to these decisions, it's usually like there's thought into it, but I don't know if like there's an end time or a time that people can reflect back on. Like now, like I think most people can agree it's really really late for Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe to be considered for the Hall of Fame. But I mean,
Well, you
it's
hope maybe his family gets something out of it if they get in. But really, I think it's more about getting it right. I mean, our friend Woody, our mutual friend Woody, said that Pete dug his own grave. He put it in a note in one of our text strings. He said dug his own grave. If he showed an ounce of humility at some point during his lifetime, he might have been in much earlier. But he was
mhm,
always this Pete can't help being Pete. And
yeah.
here's the way I look at it, and this is why I say it's evolved. Once the steroid era came, and then all of a sudden you got Ivan Rodriguez, great catcher, Hall of Fame, one of the greatest catchers of all time, but definitely clouded in the steroid era. And David Ortiz made it 2022. And here's the thing: you could tell me that he never got caught or never tested positive, but he did test positive in a secret or a clandestine test that wasn't supposed to be made public. There was a time when the Major League Baseball said, we're going to test everybody right now, but we will not make the results.
You're saying Ortiz in the Hall of Fame?
Ortiz got in 2022. So my point is, Barry Bonds didn't get in. Ortiz got in 2020.
Alex Rodriguez.
Alex Rodriguez didn't get in.
Right.
So Alex Rodriguez has got better stats than David Ortiz. Not as clutch, obviously. But my point is, and Alex Rodriguez got nailed a couple times and openly admitted it. But
Right.
again, you've got guys that are in the Hall of Fame that are under the cloud of, suspicion. And then it becomes like, okay,
Yeah.
um, these guys who did steroids, you got to also remember that steroids, like nobody knew what steroids really were and if they were even illegal to use in the early going. It was just like people were denying using them because there was a stigma to them. And then obviously
Hmm.
baseball banned them. So you got to go back to the history of that. And I know we're not going to do that here on this podcast, but my point is, you know, if Mickey Mantle had steroids, if Willie Mays had steroids back in the day, I don't know that they were choir boys and they wouldn't have taken them. They all took barbiturates and they all took uppers to play baseball games.
Yeah.
And I say all. Many of them talked about it afterwards. We took a lot of uppers to, because we were playing a lot of day games back in the day and we had to, travel by train and all that. So they were popping pills. Is that illegal? Should that have been banned? Should that have been, is that a stimulant? My point is this. I think back in the day with Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe, yeah, lifetime ban or never being able to be admitted is one thing. But
Yeah.
I think because baseball has done such a poor job making moral judgments and picking and choosing, it really should just do what they do now with getting caught with steroids. This is the like the here's the period of when you're banned for.
Yeah. It
Pete Rose could
definitely
have
makes
been banned for
questions.
25 years and it would have been a major penalty, but he still would have been able to see himself get into the Hall of Fame.
I kind of remember hearing Pete talk about those appeal processes. I mentioned that there were the appeals. I don't think were. I can't imagine they were taken
Right,
seriously just because they're not. I don't remember them being public, but I mean, if they were, like, how serious were they? Like, were they ever
right.
like a committee got to the vote and they were like, I mean, there's a group of people that decide these things, and unanimously, I think they all decided not to bring them back in. And I mean, it should. I think it should be flexible. I think it should be like almost like a yearly thing for some of these guys. Um, yeah, like steroid users. Like, I think we can agree Barry Bonds is one of the best hitters of all time, and you definitely have an advantage with the steroids. But like after time has passed, what happens? Like in the next 50 to 70 years of baseball, like what if we reach another steroid era? Like it's a real possibility.
It is. And,
Um,
one of the things that my friend, I won't name his name, but was close to Major League Baseball told me, and this is a few years back, but he said this ebbs and flows back and forth. The players get way ahead of the testers, and so they feel comfortable with doing more and more steroids. And then the testers catch up
yeah,
and they catch some. And then the players get ahead of them again with masking agents and things like that. And it
yeah.
goes back and forth. And Adam and I, Coach Adam and I were going back and forth on that. I was like, yeah, I think that's you know that's just something that happens, and the players are usually way ahead of the testers. And there's a lot of guys who are doing steroids. So my point is this: there's so many more guys that are probably doing steroids that are putting up Hall of Fame numbers now.
Yeah.
Not so many, but several. And you got to go. They're just not getting caught right now.
By the way, I wanted to say we don't actually know if we're in the next steroid era or not. Like I think we won't know that because the last steroid era lasted however long. You know, you could say '06, '07.
I
Um,
look at it this way: that we continuously are in the steroid era because there's a cloud over baseball of illegal banned substances that people just mask. So
yeah,
again, getting back to the news, I feel like they should have really at some point just decided, you know what, we're not the moral police. If we were, maybe Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. And I don't mean to besmirch or disparage their, you know, their character. I think from biographies and things that I've read, I mean, these are people who had some character flaws. And so
Yeah,
my point is so much, not so much that I'm taking shots at them, is that Major League Baseball really has taken a stance when it benefits them, it seems, and then when they need, like Pete Rose, 1999 All Star game, roll him out for the top 50 players of all time, and he's allowed on the field, but he's not allowed to watch his son's major league debut. They won't let him in the stadium to watch his son make his major league debut, but they'll roll him out for the 50 greatest players of all time. And then I think they rolled him out one other time, maybe in Cincinnati, and it wasn't lost on Pete. So I think that Major League Baseball has made mistakes along the way, and my
yeah,
stance now is, yeah, you know what? This is Pete's dead, and they feel like, okay, we'll do it now. Maybe they feel like baseball needs a boost, or they need some headlines or something. But since he's gone and he can't taint it, because Pete wouldn't,
yeah.
he'd probably be like, say something inappropriate, or his acceptance speech would be ridiculous. Imagine he was alive and he gets inducted, and what would he say? He'd probably blast Major League Baseball.
Yeah, I could imagine it would be. It would probably be strained. Maybe I could see him probably having some grace. I mean, he was 83 years old when he passed recently.
Right.
Um, I mean, he'd probably be very grateful, but also like, yeah, like it's about time. Like I think there's some strain there. And yeah, I think it is. It's very odd. They pick and choose what he could have been a part of, and like a lifetime ban doesn't really mean a lifetime ban if you're picking and choosing. Like you know what I mean? Like
Well, he was banned from the Hall
I
of Fame, but they decided to ban him from entering major league ballparks. And then all of a sudden, like you said, he's able to go for certain reasons. So they just did a
hmm,
really poor job. But what do you think about the news? And if he and Shoeless Joe Jackson get in, will you be okay with that, and why?
I think so. I think it's what he did was wrong, of course. But like a lifetime ban is like I think we've said before, like the ultimate punishment. Like that's really really harsh. Um, and I think I think a punishment could maybe I don't know that could work better. I don't know how or what way, but something that doesn't exclude him from. I mean, he holds the record for most hits of all time in the Major League Baseball, and he's won.
He's a Hall of Famer
Some,
from his career. There's no
yeah,
doubt.
definitely a Hall of Famer. And I mean, to deny that talent with the other people listed in that the Hall of Fame, like I don't know, it is unfair. I do. I think he should have been in, but at what point I don't
I just
know.
think the Baseball Hall of Fame, you know, we visited it. We know it. It's sacred for baseball. You're talking about just the greats of the game and the great moments of the game, and you see so much, history
Yeah,
there and all that. But
I know. Yeah, I know we're singling on Pete Rose right now, but I mean, just to add on, we did talk to Matthew Carter, one of our first guests on the podcast. Um, he had mentioned working for the Hall of
right,
Fame in Cooperstown that they had relics and memorabilia from his career, but they didn't have him
right.
enshrined in the Hall of Fame, of course. So I mean, if that's also really odd. Like, how are you gonna have somebody's gear and memorabilia and like not have them part? I always thought that was really odd.
Again, for me, it just evolved into, instead of making a moral stance. This is where I probably differ from Matthew, who's a purist, and I respect tremendously Matthew, if you're listening, watching. I would just say, knowing what I know now, it's easier for Major League Baseball to stay out of the moral, compass. Don't be the moral compass. You're picking and
Mm.
choosing. You're making mistakes. You're not being even-handed. Um, you know, just pick a period of time for a ban. If you said, like I
Mm.
said, if you said, hey, listen, Pete Rose was banned for life, but we're going to change this to a 30-year ban. That's a that's a steep penalty.
Yeah.
He can't be voted in for 30 years, and that doesn't mean that people are not going to vote him in. Like, again, lifting the ban doesn't mean he's getting in. And same thing with Shoeless Joe. Shoeless Joe took money. Now he batted 375 in that World Series, so he took money and then he reneged on the, on the deal that he made. And again,
Hmm.
for you people who know more about the Black Sox scandal, like Matthew Carter, there's obviously mitigating circumstances there. But I don't think anybody's saying that Shoeless Joe didn't take the money. What they're saying is he kind of took it, but then decided he was going to play to win, and he did. So if somebody wants to refute that, put it in the comments. I'm pretty sure Shoeless Joe took money, and
Mm.
and if they didn't, I'll send a retraction. But my point about that is, come on, man. I mean, you know, there are circumstances where you're pressured. I don't know. Maybe they threatened his family. You don't know. They didn't have a lot of investigative journalism back then. So again, Shoeless Joe, make it a 30-year ban, make it a 40-year ban, make it a 10-year. I don't whatever the number is. Give him a punishment and then stick to it. And
Well,
and then again, even if you said it was a 50-year ban, at least 50 years you're banned. You might be dead, and you'll get in. They'll vote in you. You'll potentially get in. But to go to your grave and not know if you're ever going to get in, that's probably hard. You devoted your whole life to baseball. I don't know if that would have comforted Pete if from the beginning they said you have a 50-year ban. He might have been like, okay, so then maybe eventually people will see the light. And, this is not the Hall of Good, is what he said. This is the Hall of Fame. This is the best players in the game, and I should be judged on that. And, look at the guys who've gotten in. They weren't choir boys. And so, anyway, that's where it's evolved. I think Shoeless Joe Jackson also clearly Hall of Fame numbers, clearly had played long enough and done well enough. I mean, Babe Ruth said he copied his swing from Shoeless Joe Jackson, which he did if you watch them swing. Both
yeah,
identical.
yeah. And where does the MLB go from here? I mean, like they have this ban lifted now, and they'll get a committee going, and in the next 3 years, figure out if they make it into the Hall of Fame. But like, will this continue? Will this process where they're getting people unbanned? And
Yeah, I think
I
they're
mean,
gonna.
if,
I think
if
they're gonna. I don't know who else is considered. Those are the two big names. So sorry for not doing that research, but I think what they're saying is they're gonna basically take off these lifetime bans for players that have been you know banned for lifetime and just take it up with the errors committee. Let them deal with it. Let 16 people vote on it, and if they get more than three-quarters of the vote, they're in. And I listen. If you're the writers certainly have a say in it because they cover the game. Especially if you're a veteran writer, you've been. I don't know what the criterion is, but if you've been writing on baseball for 25, 30, 40 years, you've seen a lot. So you probably have a perspective. And then, and then major leaguers who are in the Hall of Fame, they certainly should have a say. So to me, let them vote on it. Let them vote on it.
yeah,
And then if they don't get in, then really Pete and Shoeless Joe, they listen. You're being judged by probably the best of your peer group, so to speak, and they don't want you in for some reason.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I would also like to hear more player perspective on it. Especially from former Hall of Famers still around to talk about this. We'll probably see the next coming week about some guys coming out and reaching out to discuss what they feel like about this. And I mean, I can't imagine there's negative feelings towards. I mean, these players are amazing. I mean, If you look at the numbers, they just speak for themselves.
Yeah, and I think to put a cap on it and a bow on it is like, I'm glad they did it. It's just the timing of
Yeah,
it is weird,
it is odd. Yeah,
and again, Major League Baseball consistently is on the wrong side of you know timing and how they do things. They just make a lot of mistakes when it comes to that, and they pick and choose when they take the moral high ground and when they don't. I mean, they're
yeah,
so far in bed with DraftKings and FanDuel and BetMGM, for advertising dollars that it's ridiculous. They would have never done that in the earlier days. There's just too much money in it now. Once
yeah.
those uh, those places popped up, it's like, oh, there's too much money now. So where's the moral compass there? Now you're taking money. The NFL, same thing. You're talking about guys
No,
like even in
all
football.
sports.
In
Yeah,
football, you had Paul Hornig and players that were banned for gambling, just for gambling. Not even like I mean, just for gambling, they were banned, and now they're in bed with all these things. So these places. So I guess money you know, is the cure for everything. And so that's what it feels like. I think to people who have followed this, like baseball just kind of awkwardly makes these decisions. But in this case, I would say, Pete's gone. He can't really speak from the grave. If he gets in, he gets in. People who were diehard Reds fans and love Pete Rose can always say,
my job. Yeah,
hey,
I know we spent the majority of the episode talking mostly on Pete Rose, but I mean his case is the most recent, most controversial too. I mean Ty Cobb. I think his was a little more like, okay,
well,
Black Scandal, World Series, but
Ty Cobb? What do you mean about him? What do you mean by that?
the scandal.
Ty Cobb wasn't involved in the scandal. You talking about Shoeless Joe?
Shoot the show. I'm sorry. I'm tired.
Ty Cobb. Well, Ty Cobb was in the first. He was.
We're shooting. Preface. We're shooting this at about 9 p.m. at night, and we're all tired from work.
No
But
problem. But Ty Cobb got in the first year of eligible for the Hall of Fame. It was him and Babe Ruth and Cy Young and
okay, well,
Walter Johnson and I think Horst.
shoot the show. But yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
but
know, shoot
Shoeless
the show.
Joe. And so yeah, I mean, great numbers. I think what did he play? 13, 14 seasons before he got banned. So he had
Yeah,
the great numbers. Maybe not the home runs that some of the others had, but I mean, you're talking about a guy who was hitting 370, 390, this like amazing numbers and a phenomenal left fielder. Um,
yeah,
so I think it's great if they vote him in. And who am I to say from the writers and the peers? They're in the Hall of Fame. I'd like to see the greatest players of all time in the Hall of Fame. So when I go to the Hall of Fame next time with my grandchild, one of you guys give me one. Um, we can go in together and say, this was the hit king. This was one of the greatest left fielders of all time. Shoeless Joe Jackson, whatever. And then we could talk about what they did. Same thing with the steroid era. If Clemens gets in, if Bonds gets in, at this stage, there's so much of a cloud, and they're still doing it, in my opinion, from what I've heard. They're still doing it. They're just masking it. I think you just go, hey, this guy has the numbers of a Hall of Famer. He's one of the greatest, whatever it is. Clemens, pitchers. Alex Rodriguez, hitters. Third baseman, shortstop. But they played in the steroid era, and they got caught.
yeah. No, I agree with that. Who knows what the future will hold, and what Major League Baseball will start to unban, lift, and overturn. So definitely be on the lookout for that. But with that, we're gonna close here with another episode of All Things Baseball podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe, of course, and follow wherever you get your podcasts at.
And send us some comments. I'll know if
Yeah,
we get any comments. I know that you watched all the way to the end. Some of my friends, they think they watch, 30, 20, 30 minutes. Watch to the end. I want to know who watched to the end. I want to see some comments in there. I watched to the end, Johnny and Johnny.
yes, and and don't forget to buy our merch. We still got 3/4
And
t-shirts,
beanies,
hats.
yeah, hats and
I
beanies.
probably don't need a beanie right now. It's a little warmer now. I think it
Oh
was
man, you always need a
8.
beanie.
Yeah, we need a
Sweat
beanie.
it
They
out.
look cool. Look really cool.
We'll see you next
We
time.
appreciate you tuning in. Thank you. We'll catch you on the next
All
one.
right.